Hello, everybody on Zoom. This is the Tee Up with Tuck digital building blocks for a resilient enterprise with six guests here. It is a panel discussion led by me, and we have Dave Williams from Merck, we have Liz Michaud from NBC Universal, Matthew Dunlap from Under Armour, Bill Miller from NetApp, Bobby Soni for Hitachi Vantara, and Andy Nalapan from Broadband. Thank you all for taking the time out to come and see us here on vMix. And those of you in Zoom, thanks very much for again coming out and sharing this presentation, this interaction, this conversation. We have a couple of questions, and I'll just start out with question number one that we wanted to share with you. Obviously, digital adaptation has been a key driver for what we call business resilience. But are the changes we're witnessing right now today that have been reasonably young, only a few months in the making, I suppose, like virtual working, working from home, some people start to talk it distributed working now, are they here to stay or are they a stopgap? I'd love to hear your opinions, your stories about that. Let me start with Andy from Broadcom. Tell us a little bit about what you've experienced and where you think digital adaptation will go in this time of crisis and perhaps beyond.
Sure, thank you. You know, this whole working from home is not something new to us, right? It's not a new phenomenon. Now, it's been there for a long time, and you know, a lot of people have been working from home even outside the office hours, or you know, and occasionally, regularly there. But what was changed is the not to the scale, you know, the scale and everybody working from home, and what happened is during this COVID, it has given us a lot of data and facts there. You know, before we didn't have that data because we were not tracking this, and so it gave us a lot more weapons and information to the to executive management to see, you know, what we have to do to going forward. So in our opinion is it's not going to be, you know, we're not going to go back to the way where it was. No, it doesn't make sense because we have a facts and data which tells you things can be done more effectively and efficiently, you know, in some areas, you know, and that needs to be looked at it there. You know, there are some of jobs need to be done from an expensive location at Tokyo or in San Francisco or Bangalore there. Right. Same thing, you know, and the other one is we know that, you know, we need to preserve the culture. We need to preserve, you know, human race thrives on touch and feel and the emotional empathies. No, you cannot be completely disconnected there. No, then you lose the culture of like what is broadcast. You have to see that every day. You have to feel it, you know, and especially, you know, if you're if you're brainstorming, if you're developing a product, you do it there. I used to tell people that when you are in a room with a lot of other smart people there, your antenna will go up when you hear and see that body language there. Those things are all challenging in Zoom times there, you know. And also the productivity was much higher in the first 2 to 3 months because the world was shut down. No, the world is not going to be shut down forever there. No, so going forward, we should consider that also there. So we look at there'll be three group of things. The one kind of jobs, you know, like we are in manufacturing and hardware chip designs and labs. You have to come to work. There is no other way, like many other businesses there. Then there is a kind of work which can be done now outside of your offices. That means we should really look at it, whether should we even do that work, or should we give it to the people who they are core for it, or can be done now outside of the work. So there can be a lot of decisions can be made. And the other, hybrid is the one I believe, personally this, you have some kind of, weekly and monthly, you come back, you have a connections on a project basis there. So you have that, that touch, the team meetings over there. So basically, in our thing is there's a lot of data, we've been collecting it, looking at it there. We've been deciding it now. We are closing down some of the sites and also consolidating it, to make it effective and efficient where it is not needed that expensive locations, where it is better to do it outside of offices there. So that's our view on this.
Love it. Yeah, thank you, Andy. Love the 3 buckets idea. Does that translate to you, Matthew, at Under Armour? The this has to happen. Manufacturing will remain the same. We can't shut the factories down. Are there buckets that you would say the work is being done now?
Yeah, I think it's interesting as you look at the different. At first it was, as Andy mentioned, it was, you couldn't imagine while it was happening, you couldn't imagine working remote. But now that people have done it, we've seen, hey, this can actually be done. And some of the functions that we thought couldn't be done remote, that are being done remote and being done remote successfully, we're thinking, well, shoot, do these functions ever need to really return full time? I mean, there's going to be, to Andy's point, you've got to have that human interaction. And I think, if you go to maybe a team, a hoteling concept, because, obviously we can look at saving on real estate and things like that. So we go to more of a hoteling concept where teams show up on certain days, so you still have that team integration. I think you look at being able to achieve that synergy between human interaction and productivity remotely. You also you look at things like in manufacturing, those functions that had to be done by humans. You're seeing more and more automation over time, and so you're thinking, well, maybe some of that doesn't have to be the same. Maybe those people that were previously sitting in front of a line or a machine can do that remotely, and you just have a crew that sits on call to handle issues that arise. And so those kind of things, are new ways of thinking. But it's also interesting, we've had a number of discussions around, the timing of this. Imagine if this global pandemic had happened even 5 years ago. The recent explosion in collaboration tools has allowed this to be successful. I mean, you see these fantastic whiteboarding technologies, and of course, everyone knows the innovations that have come through video teleconferencing, and now you're seeing chat replacing drive-bys at work. That you stop by somebody's desk and ask them a question. Well, you can just shoot that in chat now. You do, to a certain extent, miss out on the water cooler conversations that happen, at the coffee machine and things like that, where there's innovation and creative thought that takes place in small informal groupthink.
Yeah, lovely, Matthew. Thanks so much. And Liz, that creative aspect where you need to be close, you need to be connected, you need to feel like you belong. Tell us a little bit about that from your NBC Universal perspective.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And what's kind of changed is NBC Universal has been a very traditional, everything is face-to-face. Everything is face-to-face, and virtual just won't work. That's what we were told for quite a bit. It won't work virtually to do this. And we even were in the sense of when this all happened, 40% of our compute were desktops, if you can believe it. So that makes it very, very difficult to rapidly transition. But I will say we were we kind of looked a little bit like we were geniuses, and luckily, because we had been going through a transition in the background, but we were pushing. We had transitioned to Office 365. We had established a DaaS program, Device as a Service program. We'd established a virtual VPN, so people didn't have to worry about that. So it was all set and ready to go, and we were really pushing people into it. You want to adopt this, you want to adopt it. What rapidly changed on March 13th was a pull. I now want a virtual desktop. I now want to use my Teams client and do my video, where I didn't want that before. So for us, it was an acceleration of our strategy, and it was proof that we could actually do things creatively in a virtual environment where it wasn't thought to be possible from a traditional mindset. Yeah.
Love that. We read many articles, of course, where companies did something in a matter of a few weeks, where they previously thought this is a rollout of several months.
Right.
Bill Miller, what do you have to say about that? Can you help us with your point of view, from NetApp's point of view? How have you been able to help people to have that infrastructure right up and running after COVID really shut us down?
Yeah, thank you, Martin. It's a really great question. I mean, we're a little different at NetApp in the sense we're a Bay Area technology company. But we spent the first 25 years building the world's best storage operating systems. And in the last 3 years, we've really made a high-speed pivot to moving that capability to the cloud, right? So that's all gone to, instead of racking and stacking storage in your data center, being able to point and click and provision storage and compute in the cloud, in the hyperscaler cloud. So we've sort of been on this mission. We've been trying to enable that mission, Martin, as you suggest, in making that digital turn. And we've seen a lot of our customers say, look, that's what we need, right? I don't want to have to go in the data center. I don't want to have to touch my assets. I don't want to have to control these globally when the pandemic potentially impacts countries and regions differently. So the more we can do through cloud utilities and the more we can dissociate ourselves from that, touch on that infrastructure, the better we are. So, we're kind of committed to that journey ourselves. I live that as the CIO of a company, running NetApp on NetApp and Customer One services. But I got to tell you another thing in relation to digital transformation, right? Every day, more and more of the value in products around the world, and certainly products authored in America, are instantiated in software, right? It's the software-defined X, whatever it is, software-defined network, software-defined storage. And as more of that content in value, in the value tree, go into software, the more of that labor can be dispersed. The more of that innovation engine in engineering involved in creating those new products and services can be abstracted further away from home, because really all we need is an internet connection and a good solid link and access to tools. So the more that we continue on this digital transformation and becoming software defined, the more of our innovative, creative labor force can be abstracted from our traditional bricks and mortar in buildings and locations. And, Andy knows, he's a neighbor of mine, right? Down the street here, there's no place more expensive to do business than in Silicon Valley, right? So if you open up to a chief financial officer the opportunity to reduce expensive real estate, that could be in Silicon Valley, could be in San Francisco, could be in New York City, and I can minimize that real estate footprint and at the same time maximize my access to smart innovators and developers around the planet at a potentially lower cost point, I've just hit it out of the park, right? In World Series metaphor.
Sure,
I've hit it out of the park because I've reduced the two most expensive components of my cost structure, which is real estate and labor. So I think Martin, I think we're gonna see this continue. This is just the beginning.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, but I'd love to hear from Merck and then Hitachi. Dave Williams, you first. Is this resonating with you at Merck as well, what we're talking about here? A further shift, the value of software. I love Bill's addition to that as a value proposition again within our products. How is that in the healthcare industry, in the pharmaceutical industry, Dave?
Yeah, so first I think everything's dating. And what I would do to add on to the conversation is say, this has been a massive learning experiment. None of us have been through this before, and it started for us in January in China, right, which was hit first by the pandemic, and that's where we first went into shelter in place. And so one thing that we learned is we can learn from each other rapidly. So it was very I would say challenging in the early days with everybody working remotely overnight. How do you continue to keep business running, right? How do you keep collaborating? And so there were, some technical hiccups we had, which we quickly addressed. And then when it came and hit, North America, and as Liz mentioned, on March 13th, and just about, almost overnight, everybody was working from home. We went from an average of 10,000 remote connections into our environment to over 50,000 overnight. And we're fortunate to have a cloud-based infrastructure with Office 365 and all of our collaboration tools, where we didn't have to worry about how do we quickly, add hardware and scale up to Bill's point, right? It's kind of point and click. You have capacity on demand. In terms of some of the other things that we're doing, there's strategies you have as a business in terms of hybrid working and things like that. So you could put your users in buckets of, these people need to be in the office. In our case, it's the essential workers in manufacturing and the labs. There's people that, could do their jobs from anywhere. But then you have to look at the personal side of it as well. Because for some people, working from home, they've been doing it for a long time, it's natural. There's a large percentage of our population, I'm sure everyone's, where working from home in itself was very intimidating and challenging from a technical standpoint and sometimes from a personal standpoint. So the thing I would just advise everybody is you've got business strategies, but then you have to make sure that you connect with people almost on an individual basis, because there isn't a one size fits all.
Yeah, really nice point, Dave. The context of the family home wasn't set up like an office for a lot of people. Some are more fortunate than others. Thank you for bringing that in. Bobby Sony, you're the only president in title and with Hitachi Vantara.
I'm going to be very presidential. No, look, I appreciate the panel. I absolutely, we can relate to everything the panel has said. I just want to maybe a couple of points. So pre-pandemic, 8% of the people worked remotely, 8%. So even though we say a lot of people work remotely, it was true in the technical space, but really not true broadly. So let's sort of first keep that in mind, right? And come June, 42% were working, right? So I think that spurt is quiteable, right? And of course, all the leaders, the digital leaders really did not falter because they were already invested in that. But what the point I'd like to make is, what about the other 58% that are going into hotels, factories, hospitals? So I think we can't forget that it is not possible for the world to sort of just go remote, right? Number one. So when it comes to factories, I think the digital innovation is really what we've been also focused on from a Hitachi perspective, right? So using video analytics, LiDAR, and creating a solution that can sort of make sure you are social distancing, you're preventing symptomatic people from getting close to each other, and things like even simple things like monitoring hand washing. So that spurt in innovation is been pretty interesting for us personally. And what I think everyone is saying is we will never go back to what the normal was. We'll go back to a new normal. And that new normal requires us both in the remote and the on-site spaces to use innovation very different. And that's the hallmark of human beings, that every crisis spurs innovation. And I think that's what we can be optimistic about going forward, that innovation in both dimensions will help us.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby. Was it Churchill who said it first? Don't waste a good crisis. It still hurts me to some extent, but it became famous. And it's true, of course, even in our field at TUC, we don't have to explain to any of our clients what a disruption really feels like. Everybody knows. But it brings up the next point, of course. We need to therefore, and certainly from your all perspective as CIOs, CSIOs, and this notion of learning. And it's a saying that I have picked up from action learning. Learning has to be greater than the rate of change. If the rate of change is as high as March 13th, if I would have taken a temperature of all of you, I'm sure it would have been sky high, which means at that moment, we need to also be learning at above that rate. Where do you see your roles in the learning, in the teaching, in the sharing of new tools? Because as Bobby said, and many others as well, and he started with it, we're learning at the rate of change. We're getting a lot of data, but are we feeding the innovation, the data, to the right people such that they can bring us to what you said, Bobby, the new normal? How do you feel about that? What's the next step, in other words, once we take a breath, which I'm sure we all deserve and you'll do strategically? Mm-hmm. Who can kick us off there? Where do we go next with our innovation? how do we teach people, right? The learning and development is not just a tuck thing, it's a corporate thing. We need to be serious about not our corporate education, I dare say almost our personal development. Who is doing it for you? And where is the next big wave coming that you need to support? Who takes it? Liz, I see you nod. Where do you stand on that point?
Yeah. First of all, kudos to you for this question. This was a great question, and it definitely put me into some deep thought and reflected on some of the things that we've been going through. I think we're in technology. I think in a unique situation that we can help accelerate learning with using technology. So it's sort of like using the pace of technology to keep the gap at least as wide, if not wider. And some of the ways that we're doing that, for instance, and I'm sure many of my colleagues have similar situations, but back to, I think it was Bobby and Andy who mentioned the data and the analytics and more information that we have. We have a lot of information that we collect, particularly I'll focus on cyber for a moment. And luckily we do, because in this time, right, the threat actors, they also have the same access to technology that we do. So we could detect the pace of phishing, for instance, or any sort of is exponential what we saw before, because they're trying to come after our employees now who are not sitting in their offices. They're sitting at home. They're flooded with distractions. So it's our responsibility to take that data and educate them, not only for the benefit of our company, but for the benefit of themselves and their own well-being. So we've definitely stepped up our education program based on the data that we could see to drive some more intelligence there. And it's worked out really, really well. And I can use a number of other examples where we've also just used the access to technology and data that we have to provide to other places in the business to help accelerate their learning and to ensure that we can protect the business.
Terrific. Yeah, thank you, Liz. I'm always curious about offering it and then the adoption rate. Anything to add? Have you seen people go for it more so now? Yeah, I see Dave. Please take it away, Dave. Do you see that people want to learn more now than ever before?
Again, I think it's mixed, and I love the question too, because from the seat I sit in, one of our biggest challenges is to accelerate the adoption of new technologies in order to drive business value. And the challenge is, the majority of your workforce is kind of, I'll say, heads down doing the day job, in our case, of discovering, developing, manufacturing, and getting medicines and vaccines to patients, right? That's kind of, you come into work every day and that's your focus. Technology changes so rapidly around it that there's always new, different, better ways to do things. So it can be intimidating, I think, for some people, any change. And you've got a wide range on the spectrum where you have some people that want a new technology every day to play with, and then you have others that really never want anything to change. So one of the things that our group tries to focus on as much as possible is to create an organization that has a growth mindset, right? That has the ability to balance, doing the day in and day out job, but also creating some space to think about, is there a better, different, more efficient way to accomplish this? And the last thing I'll say is we do a lot of white glove service. So especially now with so many people working from home, that's a bit intimidating. We have a dedicated team that's doing training and reaching out and trying to help people get more comfortable with new technologies, even some of the basic technologies like collaboration tools.
Terrific. White glove service.
If I may add,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to add to the point Dave was making. So one thing we found, I think the pandemic, again, if you look for silver linings in any crisis, the people have realized that investing in yourself is really important. People have known that instinctually all the while, but with the surge and the economy around you, I think one thing people realize is that invest in yourself, right? And with remote working, people are on average working 48 minutes longer, right? Just take the commute away. So what we've done sort of proactively is saying that instead of consuming that 50 minutes in your regular job that Dave was saying, step away, and we've created a curriculum for that, for specifically targeted at that. And we found 15x uptick in certifications, as an example, in a particular group. 15x, right, in 4 months. So I think the message that invest in yourself, take that extra time, put it aside, and yes, we'll match that up with curriculum that is relevant for advancement. So I think that was one successful event. And then we did the same thing for our customers. We said free training, virtual, and we will offer it, for a period of X months. And we saw 600% increase in interaction. So just kind of noting those things. I mean, people are much more aware that it is important to try and actually stay abreast with the innovation in technology. So I just wanted to it was a continuum to Dave's and Liz's, remarks.
No, thank you, Bobby. I hope HR is paying attention. It sounds like we've got some resilient people there, and more so now than ever before. Bill, what do you say to that drive to take on learning, share it? What do you do?
Yeah, a couple of key points here. First of all, I think this is a great thread, and I want to build on something Bobby just said. With the schedules people have today, they in some regards have a lot more flexibility. If you're not spending that hour and a half in your car trying to fight traffic in the commute home or coming in, you gain some flexibility in your schedule. And I think our schedules have become, at some risk, longer, right? They're almost like a 12-hour day between meetings and at different times and time zones. But while we're all captive to our Zoom calls when they're scheduled, by the way, we all learned that best practice is give yourself 5 minutes between Zoom calls for bio breaks. That's one of the big lessons I've learned coming out of this. But I think we have more latitude in our schedule each day to make break time and time to go sign into an online and maybe do 15 minutes of work and then, sit it aside and come back later, maybe come back in the evening. We've got a lot more latitude to manage our independence of schedules as remote workers, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Second point I want to make, Martin, we still have responsibilities as managers to help our people with their career and their career progression and their opportunity to do new things. We're into this. I love Dave's comment. That Dave and I are online. It was Friday the 13th of March, right? That was the seminal day. And again, being a Friday the 13th, we're coming up on Halloween, so we're all a little spooked by that date. But that's been a long time. And so a lot of our employees have been in this mode, working remotely for a while. Are we working with them holistically to make sure they feel that their careers are moving forward, that they've got opportunities to work on new projects, develop new skills, get exposed to new things in the business? When we were bumping into them every day in the conference rooms and in the hallways, a little easier to do that. We're a degree of freedom removed. We have to make sure that we're looking at our workforce as advancement and career opportunities. So those points the third point I wanted to make on this, and the last point is, let's look at learning a different way. Let's make more time for people to do higher value added functions by adopting things like machine learning and AI and automation and bots that take some of that routine stuff out of the day job and allow our employees to work on higher order, more intellectually stimulating activities and advance their career that way. So I think there's several different ways to look at the topic.
Yeah, terrific additions. Matthew, I'd love to hear from you. What's it like? A brand like Under Armour draws in a lot of people. What do you have now for customers that you didn't have before, where you really felt you had to pivot fast?
So I think, as a lot of people have mentioned, and I think everybody saw there's this huge fitness craze over the summer, which those of you that know the brand well know we also have the MapMyFitness and MyFitnessPal applications, and so we saw huge upticks in enrollment and caused us to really adjust for that, as well as it doesn't hurt that people are buying exercise clothes during the pandemic. So, but it's one of the things I was going to say on the previous shift to that topic was. It's interesting that from a technology perspective, is especially from a retail company, is technology's always been a enabler, sure, but it's kind of been something that keeps the business running. And I think you saw this shift when March 13th happened. Of everyone started paying attention. Everyone started paying attention to technology. It wasn't kind of a behind the scenes. Everybody rides on it. It was how you started getting good ideas from the workforce. It wasn't normally in the technology field of hey, what if we did this or what if we did that to further expand our technology capabilities? And so I think that was just very interesting in the sense that it brought technology up to the forefront, and it sort of drove the way we did business. And we also saw ways that we changed.
This is to pivoted, go reach out to those communities there and give them access. One of the tools we use is the Broadcom Foundation, but also with our connectivity, 5Gs and reachability, and make the devices available. That's the things even I do within my organizations. During this COVID, I've asked my team to give out all the laptops and devices, whatever we can, to these underprivileged schools over there. So all of us have to go and reach out to those underprivileged community. Yeah.
Thank you, Andy. Liz, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know how many people, I think a lot probably know that NBC Universal is owned by Comcast, and I have to say Comcast has really donated a lot back from that cause perspective. Free Wi-Fi in all of our hotspot areas, a lot for underprivileged, free Wi-Fi and Internet Essentials program, which donates thousands and thousands of laptops to schools, and for kids who are working from, kids who are going to school from home, etc. So I think I'm really proud, of our company for participating, or for kind of putting our money where our mouth is in order to keep some of those things running.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Liz. The question is, what else can we do beyond our own clients, our own people, but for the underserved communities that perhaps don't have this connectivity and therefore are not able to learn? Matthew or Andy or Dave, raise your hand and go for it.
Yeah, I'll just say, Under Armour's really, I think, done a lot of work on the underserved populations. Just being where we are, located outside of Baltimore, and really our founder, Kevin Plank, has really just taken an aggressive approach in just, bringing sport and bringing opportunities to those communities. And you can see some of the transformation, if you've been to Baltimore, some of the transformation that's occurred, and some of the facilities that Under Armour stood up to help support the underserved communities. And one of the things I really, really would like to see is throughout this, this tumultuous time, Under Armour has really done and invested a lot in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we've had a number of training sessions, a number of, opportunities to learn and experience. And it's just been, I think, really, for me, it shows how, a company can really get behind, social issues and make a difference.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. That's really great. Read about that as well. Bobby and Dave, last words.
Yeah, I'll just add maybe generically, I think as we continue to innovate as a society and we continue to bring down the cost of compute, devices, access, right, it really does start to level the playing field. And I think that's one of the huge benefits of rapid innovation is, you expand access, you expand reach, and you level the playing field. So I think, we've obviously got great momentum in that space. And I think it's important for us to keep driving that, bringing costs down and expanding access.
Terrific. Thank you, Dave. Bobby, last word. Oh, we lost your voice there, Bobby.
Again, hey, how many times is you're on mute? Yeah. I was just going to add to what Liz and Matthew said. I'm out, and one of the reasons I actually came to Hitachi, just a quick fact: 110 years ago, when the company was founded, the founder, his model, a technology for the betterment of society. Right. This ago, so that theme runs through the company. We call it the double bottom line, and we take on projects like water purification or preservation of rainforest by using IoT and sensor technology in those projects, right? So it is not something that want to kind of pound my chest about, but really I think we have to step back and look at CSR differently. So I think corporate social responsibility has always been there, but I think it's now time to sort of look at that as an intrinsic part of your business, as opposed to a program where you can get a check mark and a certificate and sort of be proud about it. So that would be the last thing I would say is I think we have to step back and look very systemically and be part of the business that we do, not a program that we run.
Lovely, lovely, beautiful words indeed to end with. I do see a challenge for all of you. You're going to be involved in human resources, no doubt. You're going to be the chief learning officer soon, and indeed the corporate social responsibility well beyond what you think of now. In my humble opinion, you'll need help. But I sincerely want to thank you for being here, sharing these ideas,